Welcome to Something to Talk About here on Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center's website. We are sponsored by Fieldstone Memory Care of Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone is offering innovative and compassionate care at their facility on Rolling Bay. They have some beautifully appointed apartments, and they are also offering day stay and respite programs. If you'd like to learn more about any of this, give them a call, 360-689-4314. And today we're going to be talking about fashion sense. We all get dressed, but the question of what to wear today actually is a little more complicated than you might think. We're going to talk about how some environmentalists and social activists right here in River City are reimagining clothing. And we've got our guest, Naomi Spinak, is here to get us started on this. There's an upcoming conference which will delve into these issues in more detail. And so we'll tell you a little bit about that as well. Thanks, Naomi, for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me.
So tell us a little bit about the idea of responsible wardrobes.
So it's a little hard to tell, but in the past 30 years or so, many of our clothes that used to be made in the United States used to be made under guidelines and regulations for labor and chemical waste and waste in general, were shipped overseas and shipped to mostly third world countries, to zones in third world countries where there aren't any regulations for labor, there aren't regulations for chemical waste, for water usage, all those things. That's the primary thing. What happened was that all our textiles started being made under really poor conditions. Something like only 2% of clothing is made in the United States at all anymore, whereas when my mother was growing up, 95% of it was made in the United States. And so what happens is that companies not only shipped clothing manufacture overseas, but they started making it a lot faster. So, and a lot more of it. So we're just creating this giant glut of textiles that we don't need. And as we're doing that, we're using up a lot of water, we're using a lot of chemicals, we're using a lot of carbon, all these things that are contributing to climate change in our clothing, and it doesn't have to be that way. So what we're trying to do on Bainbridge is to bring awareness to this topic and give people other options for how they can clothe themselves, because everybody needs to clothe themselves and not everybody makes their own clothing, although people are turning to that for certain. But we're looking at a lot of the issues about what's been happening in textile manufacture and manipulation.
So there are some companies who talk a lot about trying to be more responsible. I know, for example, Patagonia has written a lot about this, the idea of sending back clothes to them when they're done, but they're an anomaly to some degree in the clothing industry. If we were consumers of clothing, are there things that we might want to keep in mind when we're thinking about where we might get more durable goods?
Yeah, so Patagonia has been talking a lot about changing their methods because they have noticed what's happening. Part of what it is these giant corporations don't make clothes in this country. They sent them other places, and then a lot of the places they sent them outsource again to another company, former companies, and nobody really knows where everything is happening. Like a Patagonia coat used to be made in one factory, and now it's made in 6 factories because the zipper comes from one place, gets shipped across the world. The fabric for that lining comes from one place, and then the fabric from the outside, and then the hood comes from a different. So they don't even know. A lot of companies don't even know where everything is coming from, but they put their label on it. And we think, okay, well, that's an LL Bean coat, or that's a Lamb's End coat, or that's Levi's, and we know what that is, but we really don't know what that is. So my first suggestion is that the best thing to do is to reuse clothing you already have, or somebody you know already have clothing exchanges, or go to local secondhand shops. I know the senior center has a thrift shop, and there's just a ton of clothing that already exists in the world in good shape And when it's not in good shape, it can be mended and refashioned. We're having this exhibit at the BAC in April, and we're have a lot of artists who made new clothes out of old clothes. So there you go.
That's Bainbridge Arts and Crafts, right
Bainbridge
on
Arts and
Winslow
Crafts.
Way.
Yeah, starting April 1st. And that way you know where the textiles came from, because they came from something that already existed, and you know who made it. So you know that nobody's being tortured to make clothing, and they're living in decent conditions. But if you can't do that, the next thing is to just look for the option with the clearest supply chain. Look for companies that tell you where their clothes are from, what they're being made with, what happens to them when you're done with them, because we should hold clothing companies accountable for how they're making our clothes. And those are things we put on our body. So it's really, really good to know where those things are from and what they're doing to us and what they're doing to the air.
Yeah, I know I've purchased a lot of shirts from our waterfront thrift right behind this wall behind me. And there we generally have good clothing that is not too worn. But when I'm looking for something maybe for, outdoor wear, I tend to gravitate more towards purchasing a new item because I want to make sure it's waterproof and that sort of thing. I don't know whether there are things that you in the idea of making more sustainable clothing think about. You mentioned checking out what the manufacturing chain is, and maybe there's some materials that we don't use anymore, or at least the big manufacturers don't use anymore, that work pretty well to keep the water off you or that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, people are going back to old ideas. There's, wool went out of fashion for a while, but wool is actually a pretty good material in terms of waterproofness. You can add to it. You can put an otter wax on it. You can put sealers on it that don't have microplastics. A lot of the problem we have with some of the new waterproof things is that they put chemicals on them that add plastic to the water. When they're making them, when they're transporting them, and when we're wearing them. So that's the kind of thing we'd like to move away from. But there are companies, for example, Filson, which is out of Seattle, is doing waterproofing with old methods and making things that have a much better impact on the world around us. And Patagonia is working on doing that also. So companies are changing, some companies, to make new clothes with better methods that are just a whole lot more sustainable than things that we've done more recently.
So in the mail that you sent to me about this, you mentioned the idea of a creation of a fiber shed, which I had never heard of. Can you tell us a little bit? I know that they have now, because I've gone online, fiber shed is quite a movement, and there are lots of communities that are working in that way. And I saw that book. So tell me more.
So yeah, Susan is going to be here because she's working a lot in that. But fiber shed is, if you heard of the idea of a watershed, which is where your local water comes from, and the bodies of water and the streams, the rivers, that are near you, is just the idea of thinking of fiber the same way. Like I was saying before, a generation ago, 2 generations ago, people knew where fabric was made, and now I'm sure that most of us can't say where fabric is produced, most fabric, unless you're a knitter or a weaver personally. So what the idea is to start looking at that and to make more local fibers available. There's, even on Bainbridge, sheep farmers and alpaca farmers, and a lot of the mills and processing plants closed as manufacturing left the area. So people are trying to work on bringing those back, and small producers are working on processing small amounts of fiber for the idea of being able to offer local fiber to people who want to use it. And so that, once again, you can know where your things were made, where it came from, and who made it, and what conditions it was made.
So on Bainbridge, as this kind of work is coming together, if I wanted to know more about what kinds of resources are right here, would I guess I could email your group or?
Well, we have a new website, refashion.org. And we're just getting started. So we're updating that as often as we can. And Susan Scalick, who is our local fiber shed person, is working on finding out more about what's going on in the area. We don't have a mill or processing plant on Bainbridge itself, but we have some in the Olympic Peninsula and certainly on islands, and certainly but as you head on towards Portland and Tacoma, there's a lot of things that are starting to happen. So as that happens more, we'll update, and we'll hopefully be able to have events and have local producers come and start offering things. I mean, if you go to farmers markets around, you can often find a local wool or someone who's spinning or dyeing their own wool. And so we're just trying to encourage growth of that and encourage people to look locally and
Yeah. We have a
support that. Yeah.
Rita's involved in, Rita Riley, who's on this call. They meet every Thursday to knit or do other kinds of fiber activity. Some of them, I can't remember what it is that Jerry's doing with unspun wool, but some cool stuff. And you want to say anything about that group, Rita?
Yeah, Jerry is doing felting. She's making these cute little animals, and it's a great group because we meet weekly, and some of us knit, some crochets. You can do any kind of handwork. It's a great way to get together, and then sharing yarn. Sometimes people have collected it, and then it's just so much, so they'll bring it in, and we can do other things. I have a bag of some scarves and hats that I knit that are going to go to homeless people, and we've done that a lot in the past, and continue to do it. These gals have been doing it a long time, and so it's and you can get help because there's people there, so you might want to try some newer things or something that you may not have thought you could do, so that's always helpful.
Yeah, when I think about if I wanted to mend something, which I have some things I could do, I could bring them to that group and you guys would help me figure out what to do about it. And it's every Thursday at 1 here at the center.
Oh, it's
or
at this
online. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. There's
Right.
other groups. Yeah.
Yeah, there's other groups, I'm sure. And the idea is a lot of
Right.
just encouraging a lot of this kind of behavior in neighborhoods or among friends or.
Yeah,
right?
and like you said, we were starting to try to get fix-it fairs going before COVID started, but hopefully we'll get that started again, because I think a lot of people don't have the skills to mend anymore, and it would be great to learn those things or to have a place that they could go and learn, or a place that they could just get it done. I was in a knitting group at Barn, and someone came by and said, I have a hole in the sweater. Can I get someone to fix this sweater? And I just fixed it right there for her. It was a very small hole. And it was an heirloom piece from like a baby grandchild. So
Right. And in the past, if in our current sort of disposable society, we think, oh, it's ruined.
right.
And that, if you don't mind the pun, is a darn shame.
Very nice. So
Anyway,
at the
go ahead.
conference, yeah.
yeah, I was going to transition to the idea that coming up, you're actually going to have a whole series of discussions around these matters. Is it at Islandwood?
It's at Islandwood on the 27th of March.
Coming
And it
right
is
up.
in person, yeah. And we have some workshops on mending and fixing things that are stained, and maintaining your clothes so they last for longer, knowing what fibers are in your clothes, all kinds of things that we're going to be talking about.
And so do you have any details about that? What, how you sign up, what to expect, what hours, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's March 27th at Islandwood, and it's 12:30 to 5. And we're going to be talking about consumerism and shopping, and we're going to be talking about local fiber and talking about recycling fibers and upcycling, and we'll have samples of lots of things that have been upcycled and recycled. And we're going to have those workshops. Like I said, we're going to talk about secondhand clothes. We're just going to talk about some of the ways that we can combat this fast fashion attitude, and just think about our effect of of the clothes and the text, and not just clothes, but all, all kinds of textiles that we use around us.
So you can register on refashionbainbridge.org.
Yep.
Oh, there
You
you
can
go.
also find it on the Islandwood site if you're on the Islandwood site under events.
And more details about exactly who's speaking and all that is on that website as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just going to read some of these things. Stitch it, don't ditch it. Mending, as you said, the fiber shed movement, what that is and how it's going. Clothing audit, it sounds like that's something you're in charge of, Naomi?
Mhm.
And you have been the chair of the Trashin Show, which is something that has also been featured at the Bainbridge Arts and Crafts front window and in the past. You're doing something a little different this year about that too, right?
Yeah, we're going to have a show. It'll be outdoors like our show was last year because we weren't certain about the world. But this year we enjoyed it last year. So we're going to do it again, but it's going to be outdoors at Islandwood. And it's going to be very similar to past shows, except that we're just emphasizing outfits that can be worn again. So instead of one-time art sculptural pieces, we're going to head towards art, but it's just going to be wearable again.
So are you putting out a request for artists?
Yes, we have our call for artists is out now, and it's up on our Refashion website also. And we're always looking for new entrants. And actually, a Paige just came in, and she is a winner from our past show last year, and she's going to be involved in the show.
All right, Paige. Well, if you can turn on your camera, we'd love to hear a little bit about the idea of reusable, rewearable artistic stuff. I know we're hitting you right as you come in the door.
We're just jumping right in. I'll just get a little background. The Paige entered our show last year. And I can't remember if you were supposed to be in the show the year that COVID shut things down. No. So yeah, we found her and we pulled her in from Seattle, and pretty much now she is permanently a fixture on the Bainbridge Island refashion scene.
Well, Naomi's trying to make me move to Bainbridge, but I bought a house in Seattle, so I'm not moving.
I'm just bringing her over as often as the ferries are running.
Totally.
Well, sometimes that is not too taxing. I know the ferries don't run all the time. So Paige, why don't you tell us a little bit about your engagement with the work that Naomi's been doing on the island?
Yeah, like she said, I did the Trashin Show last year. Just kind of on a whim, a friend snapped a photo of the poster when she was taking a little mini day vacation on the island and was like, this looks like something you'd be interested in. I'm like, oh, fun. And then voila, here I am today. So it was super fun. And it kind of sparked my adventure journey full time into becoming a textile artist. So thank you, Naomi. Because I had always been kind of playing around with fabrics and wanting to be, in that world and everything, and life happened and I went a different direction. And now I'm full circle and totally down the rabbit hole of natural dyeing these days. And tomorrow I'm actually doing an online workshop. I'm making my own ink out of anything. So it's just kind of sparked my journey, and I'm in the thick of it. So
are you going to be helping out with this year's refashion show?
Potentially.
I see. So I might be a foil here to try to get you locked in on Naomi's behalf.
Well, she is teaching workshops at the conference. That is
totally. I'm super excited about that. Just, kind of spreading my message of textile reuse and, recycling and kind of looking into where do our clothes come from and what are they made out of and how are they made? And, I think everybody's slowly, why we're doing this today, is everyone's slowly coming around to where we were with organic food, 5-10 years ago. And now it's just like, well, duh, yeah, organic food's better. But, what about our clothing? What do we do with it? Where does it go? And so my whole idea on a one-woman mission for everyone to do repair and reuse of their clothing, is just to kind of normalize repair and take it and make it accessible, and take it from something that is used to be considered, oh, you only repaired your clothing if you couldn't afford new. And so kind of turning that on its head, but then also making that accessible to people who maybe don't have the time or care about learning how to reuse their clothing or fix it. And so providing that service as well, or teaching those skills so other people can provide that service to people who maybe can't afford or can't take the time to do it. So it's, I don't know, it's a long answer.
It seems like that's one of the challenges. To some degree, we've been socialized to not expect that we would be able to or have time to, that we need to be busier than. And so, you want to get on a website, buy something, have it delivered the next day, and not give it another thought. And that has a lot of environmental consequences, probably. I mean, not probably, absolutely.
Does.
And so we were talking about that earlier with Naomi. So when you talk about repair or mending, besides the idea of, well, one thing is maybe what kind of an attitude do you bring to that might seem to give it new life or make it a little more fun? And sort of, do you change the clothing in the process of reimagining it?
Yeah, I think, there are a varied number of reasons of why we stop wearing something, or, and I mean, think about how many articles of clothing that you hang on to, or textiles or towels or whatever that you hang on to because they have sentimental reasons, but you don't know what to do with them. You're like, they're just in a box or in a drawer, and then you fall upon it when the seasons change. You're like, oh, great. And then, oh, I don't wear that because it has this with it. Or, so I think it's a way to be creative. And it starts for me, it's a way to be creative, and it starts a conversation with people. If somebody sees something and you just feel different when you're wearing something that you've manipulated in some way, instead of going to like JCPenney's, or that doesn't exist anymore, I guess, or Forever 21 or whatever, and buying something online.
Well, I just think you say that, and it makes me think of the way that the Crocs shoe company promotes itself. It's like, you can make these shoes your own, and that's a good thing. It's like, well, you actually could do more than that with your clothes. You could actually make them your own.
Yeah, but if you don't know how to sew, that's not a big deal. It's not, if you can paint, like I just bought some fabric paints and started playing around and doing little designs or doodling or whatever, or, it's just a way to make it more your own. And then there you're gonna care for it more.
And I think because clothes touch our bodies, a lot of people have a relationship with their clothes that they don't have with some other items in their lives. But on a fixing, Reed, you were talking about technical clothes before, about outdoor gear. And I just found patches that you can use at home for kind of stuffed things like sleeping bags and those puffy coats that when they get a hole and the filling starts leaking out, and you don't.
Yeah, and I'm putting glue on them.
Yeah. You don't want to sew them because then you put more holes in them and then more filling comes out and they're not waterproof anymore. But there's a company now that makes small patches called No Sew patches, and it has a sealant on it, and they have fun different ones that you can use to create your own designs, and they have ones you can cut yourself and make your own shapes, but they also have artists designing these patches. And so I just put a little Sasquatch on my coat and now I can wear that coat again. That was leaking down fill, and I don't have to worry about replacing it. I don't have to take it somewhere to repair it. It was very easy, very cheap, and now it's totally usable again.
And your patch looks much cuter than my glob of glue.
And it might last a little bit, but you can always, all those creative ways to fix things that we haven't thought were easily fixable. One of the main things I find always breaks on my things is zippers. And zippers is a skill that a lot of people are afraid of, replacing a zipper. So just being able to get a zipper replaced makes a huge difference to how long you can keep your jackets.
And starting to make these connections may make it possible for us to find out where we might go if we're afraid to tackle that zipper project, but we can find somebody who might help us.
Yeah. And I even learned, because I have a background in working for theaters, that you can replace parts of zippers. You can just buy parts of zippers and replace them, which probably most average people don't know that, maybe you could replace the pull, because the pull you could just tie on a piece of ribbon or something, but you can actually replace the ends and the top and not even have to do a whole fix.
So I want to, if any of you have questions, just open up your microphone, or we're happy to take any questions you might be on your mind, either when you came here or based on what we've been talking about. Rita.
One of the things, and I know this isn't exactly what you guys are talking about, but my daughter uses Rent the Runway, and I'm sure you've heard of that. And for her, it really works because she works from home most of the time, but she travels, or if she goes like on vacation, she wants resort wear, but she doesn't want to she didn't even have time to shop. So she can go have that done and then send it back, and it gets, so that's kind of one way of reusing it. I don't know if it's the best way, but it's something, and she's really found it really helpful for her. She doesn't have to worry about what I'm going to wear. You can have it sent to a hotel or wherever you're vacationing, so you don't have to pack it. Put it back in the bag and drop it off, UPS as you're leaving. And so she's found that really helpful. And a lot of people I think use it. So that's one way to keep a bit of stuff out of.
Keep more stuff from being made, which is
Right.
good. I think one of the things about sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Things about Rent the Runway, which is a great concept, is just the shipping, because all that shipping back and forth across the country, that's one of the main carbon emissions impacts of textiles. Now, if we get to electric trucks, that will change the equation completely, because it won't have the same kind of impact. But renting or borrowing is a great option. And I think that it's a great option, especially if you don't have anything locally. But if you do have things locally or friends you can borrow from, I know that for formal gowns, it always seems like such a no-brainer for people to share those things, because we have proms and weddings, but only like once a year. Once you get older, once every couple of years, and owning those things, having closet space for them, just seems like if we can share, if we can have community closets, if we can have local back and forth renting or trading, that's the best way to do things locally if you can. But
So is the hope that that kind of thing might start to develop here?
Yeah, there already are people doing them small scale. And so promoting that and working on expanding that. And the thing about the places like Rent the Runway and ThreadUp is that they have these big warehouses and they can store a huge capacity and be able to ship those things. So that's, if you could do it on a smaller local or more local version of that would be a great thing to see. And also, telling people that's a good thing, right? That sharing and wearing these things over again, reusing them is not something to look down on.
Again, if you're interested in the conference, it's coming up right away. It's coming up on the 27th, and you can register on refashionbainbridge.org or at the Islandwood site, and also watch for the presentation at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts starting on April 1st, and keep your eye open for the Refashion show, Refashioned from Trashion to Refashion, coming up later in the summer.
That's the 12th of June.
Thank you both. That was wonderful. We really appreciate your time.